to the Cardinal, News of Virginia, a podcast from Cardinal News. We're a nonprofit news outlet. We serve Southwest and Southside Virginia at cardinalnews.org. The Cardinal podcast is sponsored by Muneris, serving our communities with expert group benefits and Medicare solutions. I'm Dutchie Jessee. A regional partnership in the far southwestern part of Virginia is training young people to develop skills in the solar power space, hoping they'll stay close to home for energy-focused jobs. And here to talk about that today are our Cardinal News reporters, Lisa Rowan and Matt Busse, who recently wrote about this. Lisa and Matt, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. This coverage, I should say, this article that you all worked on together is part of a series from the Rural News Network, which is in the Institute for Nonprofit News, and Cardinal News is a proud member of that institute. Lisa, you talked, I'm just going to jump right in and get into some of the people that were featured in this coverage. You talked with a young man named Mason Taylor. So tell us about Mason.
Yeah, we talked to a few people who have gone through this apprenticeship program that started in far southwest Virginia in Lee and Wise counties a couple years ago. So Mason is someone who was in his senior year of high school and hadn't really been sure what he was going to do with his life, with his career, but he had gotten into electrical classes and had found them really interesting. So this apprenticeship opportunity came up. What had happened was that Lee and Wise County schools were putting solar panels on their school buildings. And this was going to take quite a bit of time and effort. And the solar companies that were contracted to do the service worked with the school divisions to figure out a way to make a program where students could get on-the-job experience, they could get college credit, and they could get paid for a summer worth of work actually in the field, learning how to do solar installations on commercial rooftop properties. Mason was one of those students. And after going through this program all summer, getting paid, working 40 hours a week, he has stayed in the region and he has stayed in this field. Now, Mason is one of those students who we talked to who really wants to stay close to home. When he was thinking about what he wanted to do for his career, he didn't have to leave the region to be able to have a good paying job and a good career. This training has allowed him to stay in the region and see how he could stay in the region. He's done a couple of jobs since. When he got through this program, he started working for the electrical installation company for a while. He has worked for the school division for a little bit as an HVAC and electrician technician, and he is now working at a state prison out in Big Stone Gap. And it's not like the first place you think of that needs electricians, but they do, obviously. And so he's able to work really close to home doing that, make a good wage. You know, he has a schedule that he likes that works for him. So it's helped him really explore the ways that he could take some of these skills that he learned in the field that summer and in his electrical classes and apply it to a career that's really fulfilling for him.
Yeah, let's have a little bit of context in terms of installed solar capacity in Virginia. Where does Virginia fit in with states in terms of expertise in that, but also how much solar power we're actually using in Virginia? Can one of y'all tackle that?
That's a Matt question.
That's a Matt question. Here we go, Matt.
Yeah, so, overall, solar is still a relatively small slice of the electricity pie in Virginia, right? I think for the Commonwealth as a whole, it's around maybe 5% or so. I think renewables altogether, which includes biomass, is about 10 or 12 or maybe 13%. So solar somewhere in the 5 to 10% range. Natural gas and nuclear are still the top sources of electricity production in Virginia, but solar is a very fast growing category, especially here in the past 10 years or so. Not only what we call utility scale solar, which is where you see these rows and rows of solar panels out in the field, but there's also growth in residential and commercial solar, where people put solar panels on their rooftops, whether it's their home or their business. So while solar, again, overall, not the biggest producer of electricity right now, it is a very quickly growing category.
Yeah, so the reason that is a question that I had is because obviously if you're developing skills and there's this apprenticeship program, I guess the question would be what is the foreseeable demand here in Virginia? Is there going to be that we know of, or is it certain portions of the state? What are the predictions around that if you've talked to people who have that who are predicting this?
Sure. Well, obviously it's really hard to predict the future, right? And a lot of the growth in any energy sector, and solar's no exception, hinges on whatever particular policies are in place. And there are some changes on the horizon, both in terms of tax policy and how our electric utilities interact with solar panel owners that could affect the adoption rate in the future. My takeaway from talking with the folks in this story was that the solar installation skills that these students are gaining through this partnership among the local public schools, the community college, and these companies, through that partnership, through the apprenticeship program, the skills that they're gaining are really another tool in their toolbox, figuratively and perhaps literally too. It gives them a competitive advantage when they go looking for jobs, that they have these skills, that they're certified solar installers. It's a component of their education in becoming an electrician for most of them. So as they move from being apprentice electricians to journeymen and then masters, having these solar installation skills, it's another skill that they bring to the table, basically.
Yeah, okay. Lisa, back to the actual, you talked to Mason, and we'll bring some other people into the conversation as far as like your experience talking to them. But back to sort of the nuts and bolts of the apprenticeship. What does it involve? I think you mentioned the counties, but can you tell us again? And that's the far southwestern part of Virginia that we're talking about right now.
Yeah, this was developed in Lee and Wise counties back in 2022. The program still exists today, and it's done in conjunction with Mountain Empire Community College, which is the community college for that region. And so the school division and the community college and the vendors who are actually doing the solar installation work have all worked together to create this program. They say, okay, before they get up on a roof, they need to do X many hours of safety training in the classroom. What are the things that it takes to align the CTE center at the high school level, like align their curriculum with the curriculum that they're going on to in the community college if they go that route, which aligns with whatever skills they're going to use in the workplace, right? So the companies and both school levels are all working together. And there is a lot of overlap, naturally, if you went from CTE classes in a high school in Virginia public schools to the community college, it's going to be a pretty seamless experience for you in terms of what you need to know and getting up to speed. But being able to make sure that these students are getting skills that they can use and then training that can grow with them. So, being able to get 9 credits at the community college level to get started if they're just graduating high school, and then being able to add on what they're calling stackable certificates or stackable certifications that can be sort of turned into an associate's degree over time, but they're earned on a more short-term basis. So you don't have to think 2 years into the future. You can think 6 months into the future into what skill you want to learn next. So it's really about blending the on-the-job experience with the classroom and lab experience in order to help students, see this work up close and personal, see what can be done in their own communities, and make sure that they're getting a really good foundation to be able to, if they choose, go into these growing fields like solar installation. And I can give you a little anecdote about sort of like what the options are for the students who go through this. So we talked about Mason Taylor, who started working for Got Electric, which is the actual installation company that's been doing the work in Lee and Wise counties for this program. He started working right after this program with Got Electric, but that work, as it is now, requires a lot of traveling around because not all of the jobs are in that far southwest corner of Virginia. They might be in Abingdon or Blacksburg. They're kind of a hike in some cases.
Mhm.
And Mason didn't love that. He wanted to be at home. He wanted to be home every night and not in a motel, maybe. So he left, got electric. Then he went back for a couple jobs, and now he, is at the state prison. And an employer might say, "Oh, why are we going to spend the time and money training this worker if they're going to leave our company?" Well, if they're staying in the community, there's still a value to that student having those skills and being a part of that workforce. On the flip side, you have a student like Anthony Hamilton, who we talked to, and Anthony is still working for Got Electric. I think he's in his third year working for them, and he goes around to job sites. When I talked to him, he was at a poultry farm in Abingdon where they were putting in a big solar array, commercial size. And he's been able to see his career in that company, and he can see a future for himself. And it just shows that these two students have taken very different paths since they went through this program, but they're still doing really valuable work in their communities with the skills that they've chosen to specialize in right now.
Yeah. Matt mentioned that a solar installation and having that skill set is another thing you can put on your resume. It's another skill that maybe gives you a competitive edge. Let's talk about income for this kind of work, though. If that's the case, where you would probably maybe be an electrician and you also can do solar installations, tell me how that works and how what the income is like for that potential career, if that solar installation skill set adds a great deal in terms of your a higher income, and also put that in context, if you will, to this part of the state in particular. So if they were to stay there, what kind of income would they be making and stuff like that?
The income is definitely going to be higher at this point in the eastern part of the state because that's where there are a lot more solar specific jobs.
Okay.
So if you're thinking like, oh, I want to make a bunch of money doing this, you probably want to move away maybe for a couple of years as things are starting to move west gradually. But starting pay for these students getting out in the workforce is $17 or $18 an hour. And if you're thinking about the median salary for electricians nationwide, it's about $60,000 a year. So we're looking at solid incomes and careers for these students as they build their incomes and their skills. If you compare that median salary to Lee County, where, one of the original counties where this apprenticeship program originated, the median household income there is only about $42,000. So if you think about one person in your household could be making $60,000 in that area, maybe it's not going to be that much for an electrician, but it's still going to be a really solid job for someone.
Mm-hmm. Matt, you also spoke for this coverage with Tony Smith, the founder and CEO of a Stanton-based company called Secure Solar Futures. What is that company, and what's his take on this program, training some of these younger people into this workforce?
Actually, Lisa spoke with Tony for this
Well,
one.
my bad.
Yeah.
Lisa, shifting gears. I thought it was Matt, but I guess I'm wrong there. So you worked on it together. But Lisa, tell us about Tony Smith and his company.
Yeah, so Tony's the head of Secure Solar Futures. They do all of the solar installation project management. So they'll work with, and a lot of times they work with school systems, and they talk about, ways to put solar panels on the roofs of schools. And what basically happens is the schools don't pay for the install of the solar panels, but they do sort of like a savings share with the companies over time. They sign like 20 or 25-year agreements. The schools are able to use the energy that they're producing. And usually the company will like do the roof for them because the roof usually needs some work before they can put down the solar panels. So Secure Solar Futures works with school divisions to get that all set up and then works with the vendors who are actually doing the on the roof installation with the students day to day. And this apprenticeship program came out of the superintendent in one of those original school divisions saying to Tony Smith, like, I would love for our kids to be able to see this work up close, see their opportunities to be able to do this work in their hometown. Can we set something up? And that's how this all came about, was like a request from the superintendent and the CTE staff to be able to like go a step further. And it's something that Secure Solar Futures has expanded and is doing in different school divisions now. And it's not something that you can pick up from one location and just put down in another and repeat it because of the fact that every school division is a little bit different. Their needs for solar, if they go that route, are going to be different. And the partners are all going to be different in terms of what vendors you're working with, what community colleges in that area. So it's a lot of hands-on work that it takes to get this kind of program up and running in a place that may not have it yet. But one example of where Secure Solar Futures is expanding this, they call it the on-the-job training boot camp. They're going to be doing it in Roanoke City this summer for the city schools. Secure Solar Futures was the company that the schools worked with on phase one of their solar installations on their schools. And this summer, they're going to start phase two. And this is when they're going to start bringing in student apprentices who are going to be working on those job sites. And they're planning to add in a component to actually teach students how to do that roof restoration work that's required before installing solar on a roof. Tony Smith was telling me that in going through the various steps of running one of these programs, they learned that the roof restoration is also very important to this whole process and very valuable for students who are going to be in the trades. So is it a way that we can include more students in this on-the-job training? And so that's something that I'm going to be following back up with and checking out in Roanoke this summer, to see, because, Lee and Wise counties and Roanoke are very different places with students with different priorities and different expectations of the workforce and what pay are going to be like. And so it'll be interesting to see how it differs place to place. But Secure Solar Futures has been very active in figuring out ways to make this a value add for the school divisions that they're working with, instead of just the bottom line cost savings for energy. It's, how can it enrich the CTE programs that they're already doing as well?
Matt mentioned that solar right now is a small part of the pie, a small slice of our energy pie in Virginia. So I was wondering how hard, when you mentioned that you talked to Tony Smith and his company in Stanton, how many solar companies are there in Virginia? Are there that many? And I'm not sure which one of you is better equipped to answer that, but is it easy to find someone in the biz in Virginia?
Yeah, I don't have a number in front of me. I mean, I think there are a number of installers, I can think of off the top of my head. I don't know. I'd have to look up an actual count though.
But it's not unheard of. It's growing and it's becoming, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And also what you're seeing more and more of is companies that were already doing roofing work are branching into solar, as part of their roofing work. So they'll sell you a package where on your house you might get a new roof and solar panels at the same time as part of a package. So it's not just these solar installation companies that focus just on solar. You're also seeing it in, the roofing and construction industry as well.
Yeah. Lisa, the apprenticeship program that you all were talking about down in Lee and Wise counties, is it something that can be duplicated or will be duplicated in other parts of Virginia, but especially Cardinal Country? We cover this pretty much the whole western part of the state.
I think it will, as companies like Secure Solar Futures work with more school divisions, they're going to have more data available to school divisions about what the potential cost savings are. And we're talking cost savings over 25 years in like the millions of dollars. Like, it's significant potential savings if you think of the amount of energy it takes to power a school building, and also the amount of roof space that school buildings have. They're large facilities. They can handle a large solar array. It does provide an opportunity for school divisions. I think, as I've seen watching how school divisions have discussed, maybe dipping a toe into solar, there are concerns about getting into a 20 or 25-year agreement with a company on a technology that's new and is sort of uncharted waters. But I think as more school divisions sign on, you have Lee and Wise counties, you have Roanoke. There are some schools on the eastern side of the state and in Northern Virginia too. So if you have more and more case studies and more people that you can call as a reference if you're a school division thinking about doing this. Just thinking about that sector of being able to do this kind of work in solar expansion, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. It's a matter of how fast it's going to happen. When it comes to spending money in schools, that takes a lot of time and making those big decisions. You have school boards that need to, make decisions and budget seasons to get through. So I think it's a slow but gradual thing that we're going to be seeing. But especially in this part of the state, there is a lot of opportunity there.
Mm-hmm.
I think too, just to build off of what Lisa was saying, another example of a school that's getting into this is Mountain Empire Community College itself. That's the community college that we've been talking about as being in this partnership. And this summer, they are going to work with Secure Solar Futures and with God Electric. They're going to put more than 1,600 solar panels on the roofs of several of their buildings on their campus. It's going to be under a power purchase agreement in which the companies will own the panels and Mountain Empire will purchase the electricity. They'll be connected to the grid. They'll get credit for the electricity that's produced. That particular arrangement is, so far, to the best of my knowledge, unique among Virginia community colleges. There are other Virginia community colleges that have some solar installed, but this particular financial arrangement for the solar panels that will go on the roofs of their buildings is new and unique. And if it turns out to be successful, it could potentially be a model for some of the Commonwealth's other community colleges.
Great. Thank you for mentioning that. And thanks to both of you for your coverage on this. I should mention Matt is our business reporter and Lisa covers education. So it's a good partnership. This story is covering both of those sectors. So thank you both so much. And I always like to end with just letting our listeners know how they can reach out to you if they have feedback or a news tip. And I will say that we have submit a tip buttons all throughout our website. You can also email news@cardinalnews.org. Matt, how can people get a hold of you?
Sure. I'm at Matt, MATT, at cardinalnews.org.
And Lisa?
And I'm at lisa@cardinalnews.org. You can probably guess what our email structure is for just about anyone.
Sure, it's very easy. I love it. Thanks to both of you for sitting down with us today.
Thanks,
Thank
Dutchie.
you.
Yeah, and thanks to our listeners listening to the Cardinal News of Virginia. We want to also thank our sponsor, Buneris, and Zach Shelton of Cardinal News for his support. You can see all of our paywall-free journalism. It's nonprofit and independent, and it's at cardinalnews.org. I'm Dutchie Jessee for Cardinal News.
From Red Oak to Greenville, Bluefield to Orange, and Gold Vein to Silver Beach, the Virginia Press Room features the voices of Virginia's press corps from every corner of Virginia. The podcast is a joint production of the Virginia Public Access Project and VPM News. Get the top headlines of the week and the inside scoop on Virginia politics when our top reporters open their notebooks and tell us the story behind the story. New episodes every Monday morning.